kind of presentations. So, Shabbat Shalom, everybody. I have to tell you, there are two very frustrating things for me in my life. And I often speak of those frustrating things here from the Bima, and I want to tell you about another one this morning, and it's when you ask somebody to do a very simple task, and they get it wrong, and you feel like they're messing it up on purpose so that they won't have to do it again. Can you take out the garbage becomes such a big production that you think twice about asking that person to do it again in the future. And also, the converse is true, and that is when somebody asks you to do something and then they hover over you so much that you don't understand why they're wasting both of your time, right? If they're going to hover so much, why don't they just do it themselves? And that's the simple explanation of, can you empty the dishwasher? And then they hover to make sure that you're emptying the dishwasher in the proper order. And so it reminds me of some advice that a friend of mine once gave me. And he said to me when I was a young, first-time father, he said to me, when you go to diaper your son, do it wrong, so that in the future, you probably won't be asked to do it again. That wasn't actually true, but it seemed like good advice at the time. But that gave birth to the age-old adage, if you want something right, if you want something done right, do it yourself. And it might be a great way to get out of doing something or get out of inspecting something so closely so that we can continue to maintain a sense of control. In the larger arena of life and working with other people, it's not a great way to function. And the frustration, truthfully, isn't worth it. And the aggravation isn't worth it. One of the great aspects of getting together with my colleagues with whom I was ordained over a quarter century ago, was listening to their varied achievements and seeing how each one of us really set out on a rabbinate that was with the same goals in mind, but accomplished in so many different ways. Some were adept immediately at leadership, some to teaching, some to pastoring. But everybody brought about a way of bringing our tradition alive in a very different and very significant way. We each have our styles and our emphasis. Some sought to teach Torah on the national stage, some regional, some sought no stage at all. In fact, many of us even shunned the idea that we were leaders at all, just trying to make our difference in our own little world. As a colleague of mine, Rabbi Howard Stecker, said it so beautifully, we may engage our communities through sermons, classes, advocacy, programs, counseling sessions, social media, life cycle events. People see what we produce. They see the dots. We know what's behind each dot. And those are the worlds upon worlds. What we did to prepare, what we feared and what we hoped leading up to the moment, what we wished we had done differently when it was over. We teach a student, we counsel someone, stand with a couple under the chuppah or mourners at the graveside, and we know that behind each person we encounter are infinite worlds. So I can only imagine what Moshe must have been thinking when his father-in-law came to him and he said, Vayomer chotein Moshe, lo tov hadavar asher asa. When Moses' father-in-law came to Moses and said, you're not doing this right. The way you're leading the Jewish people is wrong. Moses must have had an extraordinary thought in his mind. And I imagine the conversation both between Moses and his father-in-law Yitro and the internal conversation that Moses was having with himself. He must have thought that his father-in-law just didn't get it at all. After all, as Rabbi Howard Stecker pointed out, no one gets rabbis like rabbis. We understand the navigation, the uncertainty at times, the interplay between self and role, the long-term effects of being a symbolic exemplar in ways that others, no matter how well-meaning, cannot understand. Moshe must have been thinking, this man doesn't know what he's talking about. Yes, he may have been a priest in Midian, but this is the Jewish people. This is the belligerent, the stiff-necked, the complaining, the never-happy people. In Midian, he must have said to himself, one person, one opinion. But this is the Jewish people, and, well, you know how it goes. Yitro responds. He says, listen, I know I don't have the same experience as you do, but let me offer you some guiding principles from which you may glean insight. You have to select people from the Jewish people who are Anshe Chayil. They're Yirei Elohim. They're Anshe Emet. They're Sonei Betza. That is, they are valiant people. They're God-fearing people. They're people of truth. They're people who spurn ill-gotten gains. To which Moses responds, you know what? Yitro, maybe you're right. I am exhausted after all. Yes, after all, I have neglected my family. And yes, I probably am not doing the best job I could ministering to this Jewish people all by myself. And so Moshe says, I'm going to do what you instructed. And so Moses selects valiant people, capable people from Israel to appoint over them as judges. But permit me one small diuk, one small, almost imperceptible observation. Moses shortens the list. Remind you, Yitro says you have to select Anshe Chayil, capable people. Yirei Elohim, God-fearing people. Anshe Emet, people of truth. Sonei Betza, people who hate ill-gotten gains. And Moses shortens the list to Anshe Chayil, to capable people. And this, I have to tell you, sends our commentaries, our rabbinic commentaries, into apoplectic discernment. They cannot, for the life of them, see why Moses has left off Yirei Shamayim from the list. How is it possible that Moses would select people who he deemed to be capable, but yet were not fearing of God? The reasons to me seem obvious. But the Sforno and the Chizkuni bend over backwards to read God back into the list. Midat talev kigon yirei Elohim. If you're a capable person, of course you must be God-fearing. If they have a discerning heart, they must fear God. It seems obvious to them. Or maybe their concern is that if they're Yirei Shamayim, that if they're God-fearing, and the advice came from Yitro, maybe it was Yitro's God that Moses might have been referring to. And so God is left out of the equation entirely. But I think that the answer to this lies in something even a little more subtle. So let me share with you two verses side by side. There's no question that when Yitro makes his way onto the scene in this morning's Parsha, the descriptive associated with Yitro is Kohen Midian, a priest of Midian. It says, Vayishma Yitro Kohen Midian. Yitro the priest in Midian, heard what had happened to the Jewish people. He had heard how Moses had been successful. And then almost a chapter later, the Jewish people are described in the following way: Va'atem tihiyu mamlechet kohanim, that you are to be a kingdom of priests. The recurrence of the word kohen or kohanim seems to indicate that is one form of leadership, but judging is entirely different. We are going to be a nation of priests. That is, we have equal access to God in the same way everybody else does. Nobody is closer to the Almighty than you are. We don't have that system anymore in which we have to go through someone to get to God. And so the Torah is pointing out so carefully this morning, if you want religious leadership, then you go to a priest. If you want judicial leadership, you go to a judge. A judge must ask themselves, what is the law? Not, how can I impose my belief or my desire for God on other people? And here you can insert whatever names of legislators or jurists that you would like, to whom I have one piece of advice: to religious leaders, to legislative leaders, to jurists the same. It's the advice I heard from Fran Leibowitz that's now posted outside the New York Public Library. Think before you speak. Read before you think. It is Fran's way of suggesting that we have to be rigorous on what we think, on what our opinions are. But for just 1 second, permit me a digression. God is the ultimate judge. God speaking to us, about us, is speaking to us, not about others. God cares about our personal contribution to community and society. God is deeply personal and ultimately concerned about all of us. But don't for one moment think that it is your job. Don't for one moment think that it is my job to tell you what's right or wrong. Or worse, that you are right or wrong. As my mother always said to me, Jay, just worry about yourself. So now back to what I was really talking about this morning. You remember I was talking about the idea so long ago already right now that if you want something done right, you have to do it yourself, to which I suggest that's completely inadequate. If you want something right, if you want something done right, you don't have to do it yourself. You just have to ask the right person to do it. Don't come to me for advice on fixing your car. Come to me for spiritual advice. That's my area. For Moshe, the singular most important characteristic for a judge is to be an independent thinker and have conviction and to stand by that thinking. There's an amazing story. In a few weeks, we're going to read it. It's a story about Miriam getting leprosy. She and Aaron are speaking about Moshe behind his back, and Miriam gets this punishment of leprosy. You see, in the ancient world, illness was associated with sin. Wrong behavior meant you acquired disease. And in the ancient world, sin was undone through sacrifice. And it was the job of the priest to diagnose illness. That's how the ancient world worked. And so when Miriam gets leprosy, Aaron, the high priest, should have been the person to go and diagnose her. He should have been the person who told her how long she would be in confinement. And it should have been Aaron who pointed out her flaws. To which the Yismach Moshe, Rabbi Moshe Teitelbaum, makes the following statement: Karov haya ve'ein karov ro'et hanegaim. Aaron couldn't go. He was too close. He was Miriam's brother. And when you get too close, you can't see the flaws. He teaches that Aaron was too close, and when you're too close, you can't see what's really going on. People, says Yismach Moshe, are like works of art. You can't walk right up to a Rembrandt, stand really close and see the brushstrokes and appreciate the mastery of the entire painting. You can't appreciate Mount Rushmore when you're standing at its very base. We need distance. And that is the comment that the Yismach Moshe is making. We all act like judges all of the time. We judge how people dress. We judge what they look like. We judge how they talk. We judge how they walk. We judge what they say. We even have technological platforms today that are developed just for judging. Yelp, TripAdvisor, not to mention all the other social media platforms that keep people in touch, but really perpetuate. They even amplify, they distort the opinions of others. To which the Yismach Moshe adds one more little piece of advice. V'od yoter amok, it's even deeper. Ki b'chol davar hamarpeh, mikodem tzarich lizaher medivrehem hamevi'im liyidei choli. You got to be very careful. When you seek to bring about rebuke and therefore healing, first go easy. Go carefully. Take it easy. Be careful. We think we might be bringing healing. There are people in the world who are suffering. There are people in the world who are ill. And it's our job to point it out, to which I paraphrase the Hippocratic Oath. First, do no harm. For a minute before you offer your opinion on somebody else, sit for a second and think. Don't type. Don't tweet. Think. I love that Rav Teitelbaum offers his insight on that later story in this week's Parsha as a way of warning us about how easily and how damaging the way we judge others is. Rav Teitelbaum is imploring us to take a step back before we judge. Sometimes we are harshest on those closest to us. Sometimes our opinions fly quickly and we say something we wish we had never said. And then we hide behind, but everyone's doing it. Rav Moshe Teitelbaum says, go easy on the closest to us. Rav Moshe Rabbeinu says, remain an independent thinker. If you want to fix the world, if you want to make the world better, bring kindness, bring understanding. And today I say, find the right people to do it alongside you. But ultimately, maybe you'll have to learn the lesson yourself. Don't judge others. The Reform prayer book, Mishkan Tefillah, quotes St. Augustine in this place. And it says, pray as if everything depends on God and act as if everything depends on you. So today I want to conclude with the words of one of the great prophets of our generation, whose words at the presidential inauguration this year are words that should be studied as classic in literature by every high school student. Amanda Gordon spoke these words: if we merge mercy with might and might with right, then love becomes our legacy and change our children's birthright. Shabbat Shalom. Ein Kelohinu? Is that where we are?
I think so.
Yeah, I've lost my place. Page 204.
Ein Kelohinu.